Today on the show, we're talking about the buying process, and then a little later, prospecting as a new agent. Don't go anywhere because real estate gold starts now. Greetings, everybody, on this beautiful 4th of July. I'm your host, John Sang, and I'm here with the one and only Micah McCrae, broker of the McCrae Real Estate Group. So, today on the show, we're talking about the buying process, and I guess to get that started, the buying process usually starts with a buyer consultation. So kind of talk to us a little bit about the buyer consultation.
Sure. Now that could be an in-person type consultation, or that could be something that's done over the phone, especially with the influx of out-of-state buyers that we've had lately. You know, it's becoming more and more prevalent to have that buyer consultation over the phone. Now, in some cases, a lot of the people will come in first and want to talk to you before that happens, but or before they go out and look at properties or any of that stuff. But, you know, due to the fact that most houses in the past or the recent past, we've had to have like super fast turnarounds. House comes on the market, you better be making an offer the same day, that kind of situation. A lot of the consultations we're having over the phone, which is perfectly fine, but you definitely want to go, since there's not as much of a visual layout for the process, you definitely want to make sure that you're going over everything and making sure you're covering it and explaining it as to the best of your ability when you're going through that.
Yeah, so usually, one of the common scripts that we use for, buyers is called LP Mama, and it's location, price, motivation. What was the other one? LP, A.
I'm going to let you struggle.
Agent. I think there's a mortgage. And what's the last thing? Ask for the appointment. So, what could possibly go wrong?
I think we need some retraining.
Yes. So, let's talk a little bit about the financing options, because, that's one of the main questions that we have as agents, because we've got to kind of get that squared away first before we can really do anything else.
Yeah.
So talk to a little bit about the, pre-approval and how that kind of goes down.
Well, actually, there's a couple steps. Well, maybe more of a minor one, but a very important one. But I like to know if a person is working with an agent or they've signed an agreement first. That's my personal opinion, even though it does talk about location and all that stuff first. I like to know if somebody's working with an agent, because honestly, if they are and they actually do have an agent, then we are going to pretty much stop the conversation at that point if they've signed an agreement with somebody, because then we don't want to encroach on that agent's client. So, and a lot of people don't always, clients, they're not doing these things intentionally. They don't always understand what what that actually means. It's like, oh, well, I can't talk to anybody else. They don't understand it from the professional side. That's our job to make sure that we ethically and having made a lot of integrity with that as well, because we don't want to try to steal somebody else's client. It's just not right. But then going to a mortgage, if they're paying cash, obviously we don't have to go with a mortgage. We just need to know that they have the funds available to go buy whatever they're going to buy. That could be a letter from a bank. Doesn't have to be a copy of a bank statement. However, if there is a copy of a bank statement, I like to tell people to sort of black out, what their account numbers are, that kind of stuff. And if we ever send it, we would prefer to have a letter from a bank that says, yes, this person can pay cash for this property, or they have enough funds available to buy this house with the funds that they have in their bank. That's a good way to deal with the cash side of it without getting into giving somebody's complete position away.
Well, and from the real estate standpoint, it's important that we know how the client is planning on purchasing the property because, if it's a cash deal, then we've got a little more freedom at what we can offer.
Yeah, or at
Where
least
if
advise
it's
you to offer anyway.
where if it's you're doing a government backed loan, there are certain things you're going to have to do, such as you don't necessarily have to do a home inspection, but it's definitely highly recommended.
Yeah.
But then you're also going to have that appraisal, where if it's a cash deal, you don't have to do any of that technically.
If you don't want to.
So, I mean, we always, I always advise do it, but if it's a hot property that you want to get a little bit of a leg up on, that's an option that we can bring to the table.
Well, and we've had, we have experienced buyers out there that are could be real estate agents, they could be house flippers, contractors, those kind of guys and people can actually go out, look at a property, and make an informed decision without having a home inspector, run through it. Because that's their business. That's what they deal with on a daily basis. However, it is still a good idea to have that home inspector go out there, check it out. And then what I would do is just put in some form of a contingency outside of the home inspection that you're not going to walk from that. But you could have other things in there that give you that right to be able to walk away from the deal and still, not have any kind of financial penalty due to the home inspection, if something else falls apart too that you don't like.
So then once we get kind of the pre-approval process taken care of, then the fun really kind of starts to come in and we get to start searching for homes.
Yep.
So explain a little bit on how we go about searching for those homes and sending it to the clients.
So there's a lot of ways. The initial one I like to do is in the buyer's initial consultation, figure out what they're looking for, what their real wants are. And then figure out what their real needs are, not just the superficial stuff that everybody says, 3-bed, 2-bath, blah, blah, blah. There may be one person may like galley kitchens for whatever reason, and that may be their specific style of home. So if we have the ability to narrow down their searches via galley kitchens as a major point to bring that house up for them to look at, that's a cool option to have. If they want 1-story versus 2-story, or if they want a 2-story versus a 1-story, top deal with a master on the main or a master on the second floor. Those are all options that we really need to dig into, figure out what they're looking for, and why they're looking for it. Because let's assume that they're selling a 3-bed, 1-bath, but they have a growing family and they need 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, or 4 bedrooms, 2 baths for that matter. What are they looking for? Why do they need it? So that we can actually go out and do that initial search and help them find what they're looking for. And then not only that, we now have the ability, at least on our side, we can go in and we can set up these parameters in our MLS and even local MLSs beside us. We can go in and set up these parameters and be like, hey, this is what we're looking for. As soon as it hits the market, we want it to go to our client. And then because of that, our client sees it even before we may catch it, because there's hundreds of properties that get added to the MLS every single day and that get taken off the market every single day or change statuses every single day. So these kind of things help us send it to our client the minute it happens, versus we may check it 1-2 times a day, to look for that house for that client. But what would happen is if something could happen in between those times, or even in the evening, because I know a lot of agents that work, I'll get emails 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night, asking me questions. Granted, I'm not going to answer them that late. I'll answer them the next morning. Excuse me. But, if something changes that late at night, I would rather the client have it before I ever see it. And that way they can look at it and, kick it off their list or not. Because if they like it on our site, then we can actually see that they favorited something when we go check it. And then we can instantly get something set up for them as soon as possible and get them into that house to see if that's something they truly want to move forward with.
Yeah, so we've got actually used 2 options right now to search for properties. One is straight from our new website that we just got set up. And so anytime you search anything on our website, we get to see that. But then a few years ago, the Tennessee Virginia MLS switched over to a new platform called Flex. So it's the Flex MLS system, and we can also set up clients in the Flex system to where it automatically sends them properties as soon as it hits the MLS.
Yep.
So, and then it also, sends us a notification when it sends them a property and when they've looked at the property. So,
but I have to admit, I like our website integration with it a little bit easier because we get to keep everything in house.
yeah,
And it's simpler. We get just as many search options as they do in the MLS. Like if we sent you an invite through the MLS to do that same thing, we still have that same ability, except we get to keep all of your information in one place so that if you see anything at all, then we can automatically favorite. We can go back and look at it instead of looking through 2, 3, 4 systems, to find, to help you find what you're looking for. It makes it easier to have all that info in one spot, and that way we can work more efficiently for you.
yeah. So after we kind of send you all these properties, then we kind of ask you to start narrowing those properties down, so that way we can schedule a showing. So talk us through the actual showing of a property.
So one of the things that we look at when we're going to go show property is we're going to go look at all your needs for sure, and then we want to look at all your wants, and then we're going to take all the properties that don't actually look at and take into consideration all your needs. We're going to take those out of the showing process because those aren't things that meet your basic needs, the things that you definitely need. So we're going to remove those because there's no point in you looking at them for you to waste your time when you could miss another property that would be ideal, instead of wasting it on this property over here that doesn't have half the needs you need to move into. So we'll take those properties and then start showing them, and we'll take the ones that we think that you're looking at and are going to be a better fit for you up front, and we're going to show you those first, and then we're going to go down this list. We may have 5 or 6 properties that we're showing you, and then we're going to go down that list, and we're going to take your top 3. So every time we go look at a new property, we're going to rank it from 1 to 6 or 1 to 3 out of those 6 properties that we may be looking at. So as you go down and you are comparing these against the other houses that you've previously seen, we may be removing one from that top 3 and get that out of the way. And that way you're focused on your top 3 choices. Which of those 3 are you really wanting to make the offer on? Because that way you can focus on the one that best fits your needs and your wants. And then that way you don't lose that deal by looking at something that may or may not meet everything that you want. So we're going to always keep your top 3. And if your first one doesn't work out, then we'll go to your second one. And then if your second one doesn't work out, we'll go to your third one, and so on, until we get you into the property that you really want. So that's sort of how we sort of take the showing process and narrow it down so that they can make an effective offer.
Yeah, and one of the issues that I always try to discourage clients to do is a lot of times you'll run into clients that want to spend the entire day doing nothing but searching for properties.
Yeah.
Going out looking at properties. Well, the problem is after about the 4th property in a day, the other 3 just start to kind of blend together, and you can't really keep them separated. So one thing that you can do to help you with that is always take a notepad and jot down some things as you're going through the house.
Pros and cons.
Yeah, like what things do I like about this property? What things do I not like about the property?
Yep.
And then because it also helps us with those notes to see, okay, well, these are the things that they really like, so that now we've got new criteria that we can go in and kind of modify our searches with.
If we have to.
Yeah. So, but, my experience, I always ask the clients to narrow the property search down to their 10 favorite.
Mm-hmm.
And then you break those down. What are your top 3 favorites? And then your next 3, and then your next 3. And then you've still got 1 extra with the 10th one. But usually by the time you get through those 3 days of showing, you've kind of got it narrowed down enough to where you're ready to make an offer.
Yeah, and I would say that would be more toward when our market was a little bit slower, because now you'd be lucky if you could get through 2 days before you can make an offer. Because if you wait that long, you could be looking at no offer being accepted because you turned it in and it's already got an offer on it and it's been accepted. Um, you
Yeah,
know,
'cause definitely now. I mean, it's if you see something that you even remotely think you're interested in, go ahead and submit that offer.
that's the reason I like to do. If we did have to go through like 4 or 5 in a day, which is really pushing it, but if we did have to, what you would have to do is just make sure to eliminate the ones that you don't want over the top three. Because if you don't do that, you're going to start forgetting why you picked those top three, and then you need to focus on those top three. Um, and if we do run across one that replaces one of the other top three for whatever reason, that's fine. You just remove one of them and push the rest of them out. But you need to definitely sit down and look at those top three before the end of the day and say, hey, this is the one I want to write an offer on. And then write that offer, and then let's move forward and get that offer turned in, and then see if that's going to work. If not, we'll have to go to the next one. And, I'd say you want to look at that. It's not that it's a rush top situation, but you want to look at it from an educated standpoint. But you have to also understand that you may sit there and want to think about something for a week. That house probably won't be sitting there in a week. That's going to be an issue altogether.
So then the next step is once you found the property you want to make an offer on, is to actually make that offer. So talk to us about some of the things to consider in making the offer, as far as concessions and then the negotiating that offer.
So if you want to look at it from, let's say, I'm not going to say pre-COVID, but right around before it really started becoming a problem, I would say you could look at concessions as a common negotiating tactic. You could still sort of do it in some cases, but it's going to be a lot less likely that somebody will accept it because they know they have other offers that are not going to ask for it, most likely. And you still have that whole side of the market where there's agents that are still catching up to the fact that we are slowing down a little bit, which we'll go over here in a little bit on the stats side of the market. But, as we go through this transition of like it's on fire to it's slowed down a little bit, you're going to find more and more people that will start looking at those concessionable type of negotiation tactics. But our speed or our list to price ratio is still really high. So you may be saying, hey, yes, I want to do this, but you're not going to be able to negotiate price and concessions like you could pre-COVID, so to speak. So you want to go into that of still looking at what our common list to price ratio is. And then we're going to look at concessions from there, maybe be able to do that in some cases, depending on the time on market, that kind of thing. If it's a new house, if you really want to make a strong offer, you're probably not going to offer, for them to pay concessions of any kind. Whereas like if it's a property that's been sitting on the market for 30 to 60 days or something, you probably could get away with a concession offer. Probably still going to have to hold pretty tight to the purchase price though, to where it's listed. But that's just current market. And as we slow down a little more, and then sellers are going to start becoming more and more open to other ideas, then you can start getting a little bit more creative with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because really the only option you have right now as far as getting concessions is if the property has been on the market for, with our
60
current,
plus days.
yeah, 60 to 90 days, then they may start considering some alternative, concessions that you could ask for. But, right now, it's basically go in strong and hope you actually get it accepted.
Yeah, the only time that you may run into let's say a different situation as far as that goes is if you have a very unique property, which we have several that we're trying to that we've got listed currently that we're in the process of selling. But our two properties specifically, those two properties are very unique properties. So there's a lot of creativity that the sellers are willing to work with if possible. They're not completely against it. But those kind of things, when we're looking at those unique properties, it's because they're unique that your traditional financing won't work for those kind of things. So, you may have like an out of the box type financing situation, like a construction loan or a 203K loan or something to that effect. Whereas, or cash, in a lot of cases. So those kind of things change it up a little bit. So there may be an ability to throw concessions in there for that reason. Whether they've been on the market for a long time or not, because the prices on those properties are still worth what they're asking, but there may be some concession capabilities in those kind of properties just because they're unique. And it's a very situational thing. Each property is different, but if you've got a commonplace, 3-bed, 2-bath ranch or 2-story home or something like that, that's a very common sell, you're probably going to be hard up to get like concessions like on your first offer if it's 30 days or less or 60 days or less or something like that.
So now let's take it from the standpoint that we made an offer, we worked out all the negotiation, and the offer is now accepted. So both parties agree to what was offered. So kind of run us down through what happens after that accepted offer.
So obviously the first part is going to be your earnest money. That's your general thing that most people or most buyers are going to look at. So you've got your earnest money deposit. So whatever was agreed to in that contract, usually it's within 3 to 5 days. You're going to have a check that you need to either write to that brokerage or to the title company that's going to be closing the deal for you, or an attorney's office if that's the case, if that's what you're using. Then you're also going to have your inspection period. You're going to have anywhere from 10 to 21 days on average, depending on how fast your inspectors can get out there. In a lot of cases, is where you would end up more with like the 21-day thing. 14 days is average, 15 days, somewhere in that area. If you have a home inspector that's really on it, you could probably do it in 10 days. That's really how good the relationship is with the agent and that person's availability that's going to be doing the inspection. And then you've got your repairs or resolution period, which will follow the inspection period. Now, when you do a resolution period, I won't get into the nitty gritty of the legal side of it, but whenever you get into your resolution period, you have X amount of days, which is in the contract, from the day that you turn in your inspection period or your, I'm going to say your list of repairs needed. If you're going to ask for any, you'll have X amount of days, 3 to 5 usually on average, to go back and forth and come to an agreement. Once you get the resolution figured out, then you have to put it in, take it out of the proposal stage into an amendment. And then it's just a repair replacement amendment, and that makes it part of the contract. And this is what everybody's agreeing to do. Then you're going to have your appraisal that'll happen. It should have already been ordered, but it should be happening somewhere between the 2 and 3 week period of your closing. And then you're going to have your actual final walkthrough, the last couple days of it, to make sure that everything was repaired like it was supposed to be, that there's no hidden holes or anything like that, damage to the property that you didn't notice before, that kind of thing, to make sure everything's still good to go. And as long as it meets the buyer's satisfaction, then the next day is closed, or the next couple days.
And to make sure that the seller has gotten all their stuff out of the property.
Yep. Which we've had happen before. Yeah.
And then we get into, well, let's go back here because you mentioned earnest money.
Yep.
And what amount of money should a buyer kind of expect to have to put down when they make that offer?
So a good number, let's say a rule of thumb is 1%. And then anything above and beyond that is what you would consider how serious they really are. 1% is a serious buyer. If they're putting more than that, then they are really good for that deal. Because that's a lot of money that they can risk to lose if they back out for, no reason whatsoever.
Basically the earnest money is just,
it's good faith.
Kind of good faith and putting a little bit of skin in the game to show that you're serious in what you're trying to do.
Yeah, for example, you're not gonna, if you got somebody that's got a $300,000 house that they're trying to buy and they put $100 down for the earnest money,
Yeah, I mean, how serious are they really?
Yeah, I mean, if it's because, well, I would put it as like, it's really short, about $2,900. Me personally, um,
Yeah.
and that's something you can counter too in your going back and forth in the offer, so you don't have to agree to whatever they say. You can pay like, no, I want $3,000, as a minimum, and put that in there. And if they don't agree to it, then you don't have to take the deal. I mean, you've got full capabilities to say no and reject it, just like they do. They could send it back. You could send it back 3,000, and they could be like, no, I don't want to spend that much on it, for earnest money. However, the thing is that it's not money spent if they plan on coming to the table and closing, because that 3,000 gets applied toward their closing or closing costs or whatever, purchase price, whatever it may be. Um, so that is not a waste of money by any means. It's just a placeholder, that says, hey, yes, I'm good for this. This is what I plan on moving forward with. And unless something unforeseen happens, like a bad inspection report or an under appraisal, or financing gets wonky or whatever, I plan on moving forward no matter what. And that is their way of saying, yes, this is how much I believe I'm going to move forward with it, unless something unforeseen happens.
And then the last step is probably the easiest part of the whole process, and that's just going to the closing and closing on everything that you basically agreed that
Yep.
you would do. So don't go anywhere. We've still got a lot more to discuss, and we will be back right after this.
In Tennessee, the seasons come and go. But our season never ends. To be the best, it takes an entire team working together for a common goal. The McRae Real Estate Group has a mission of changing the real estate industry. We value our clients and believe in serving with humble integrity. We are data-driven and use science to influence our decision-making. Northeast Tennessee is our home, and home starts with us.
And we are back. So the next topic on our list deals with new agents, and it's probably one of the more important jobs that a new agent has to do, and that is prospecting, because without clients, then you can't make any money.
That's correct.
So let's kind of talk about the types of prospecting and some of the ways that a new agent can kind of do some prospecting without having to spend a lot of money, because that's, you got to make money to be able to spend money, but you also got to spend money to make money. So
That's very true.
It's kind of a double whammy there.
So I guess really the best way of looking at the beginning is going to be your guerrilla marketing top strategies, which basically mean cheap and free are the best ways to look at it. Now, not even though some of these may have a little bit of a cost to it, it's almost something that is so minimal that you could find a way to do it by not drinking Starbucks for an entire month. Most of these you could cut out some kind of little luxury item that if you really want to succeed at something, you're going to go do it, and you're going to do whatever it takes to do it. And some of these would be so cheap that literally cutting out Starbucks would take care of it, for example.
Well, yeah, something like as simple as just getting business cards. I mean, would be one way, just having business cards that you can hand out.
Yeah. And in our case, we actually give our agents business cards, but so that's not really a cost that that they have to incur.
Yeah.
But if they want to do other things outside of a normal prospecting type situation, like if they want to go do door hangers, or if they want to go knock neighborhoods, stuff like that, that's something they have the full ability to go do. You do not have to have door hangers to do those kind of things. You can literally just door knock, print out flyers, and go door knock and talk to people. Hand them your business cards that you've already been given in our case. You could do all kinds of different avenues. You can go, when you go out and eat at a restaurant, for example, or you're grocery shopping, or you go to Walmart, for example, you may be talking to people. You can literally start talking to people about real estate. And a lot of people, if you actually are wearing a real estate related shirt or a name badge or something like that, a lot of people will just talk to you just to talk to you. It's actually sort of crazy how many people will talk to you just because they think you're in real estate. And that is actually a cheap and easy way to do that as well, is just having something that identifies you as a real estate agent on at all times.
Yeah, like I've got my McRae Real Estate Group shirt on today, and I guarantee if I go to the grocery store after a while, somebody is going to ask me, hey, how's the market doing?
Yeah, which is an instant segue. And it is honestly the cheapest and easiest thing that you can do. And it doesn't happen all the time, but you're almost guaranteed if you did it every single day, all the time, you will have somebody walk up to you and say, hey, how's the market? Or, hey, if I was going to go buy a house, how much would I have to pay? Or, whatever. There's all kinds of things that you can get into when people know that you're in real estate. Another one, social media. That's free. I mean, there's nothing in social media that you can not do and to really push out that you're in real estate and not be able to get somebody to start writing you over it. But you really need to go out there and do it, and just do it every single day, and it's free. You don't have to spend ads to go out there and do those things. That's really a misnomer. There is a point to where you will start wanting to spend money, but that gets into later on after you've got enough money coming in. You start setting aside money to grow your marketing budget, not your prospecting budget, so to speak. Because prospecting, like I said, should be dirt cheap or free, whereas marketing, you're actually attracting people to come to you versus you go hunting for people.
So you kind of described some of the face-to-face prospecting that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
How about as far as, making phone calls? Because, that's probably, I guess, one of the easiest ways to kind of reach the most amount of people possible.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of options, does a new agent have as far as calling prospects?
Well, if you want to look at it from a listing standpoint, the easiest thing to do is for sale by owners. I would call them more than anybody else. For sale by owners are great in a multitude of ways. One, that they're actually wanting to sell their house because they're actually got it listed for themselves to go sell it. Number two is that for sale by owners, unless they're like that rare experienced one that moves like every couple of years or something like that, most for sale by owners don't understand what it really takes to sell a house, how much time they waste, showing it to people that don't have any intention of actually buying it. Then you've got the ability for the people that actually do write a contract on it, if they're going to actually close it, because that's another problem altogether. Because they may be like, yeah, I can buy it, and I'll write this offer. Well, you don't know if they've actually got the ability to buy it or not. You have no clue until closing day when they can or cannot buy it, which then they've wasted everybody's time and money at that point. You may not be getting the full amount of earnest money for that risk to cover that problem. You could also get into legal hot water by not getting certain forms filled out, which opens you up to lawsuits. There may be things that you negotiate and you go buy a form at Staples, for example, and unfortunately Staples may provide generalized information, but those kind of things are not forms that are 100% going to legally protect you unless you have an attorney look them over and they say it's okay, because then that attorney can be the one that's going to be covering your butt when something bad does happen. But you definitely want to reach out to for sale by owners, explain that that there's a lot of these things that you can do that they cannot, and really, even though we may charge a certain percentage, to sell a house, for example, on average, you're gonna make them a little more than 1 to 2%, if not more, than what they've even can sell it for on their own. So you're still gonna make them money, even above and beyond your commission.
Yeah, and I can't remember exactly when it was that I read it, but I read an article not too terribly long ago, maybe last year or something, that came out with some stats that basically said that, for sell by owners, the properties that actually sell that were listed for sale by owner, 90% of those properties actually ended up getting sold by a real estate agent.
Yep.
So only 10% of for sale by owners in the entire country actually got sold by the homeowner.
Yeah, well, and on top of that, they also, on average, and I think this was about the same time that this stat came out, but at the same time, their averages were anywhere from 7 to, I think it was like 9%, maybe. Don't quote me on the 9% part because I don't remember exactly, but somewhere between 7 and 9% less than what a real estate agent could sell that same house for.
Yeah.
Whereas like your average commission could be anywhere between 5 and 6%, depending on how good your agent is. You may actually have a profit of 3 to 4% in some cases, above and beyond what you could sell it for, and not even having to deal with it except for sign on dotted lines, at the end of it. There's not really a whole lot of work that involves the client versus like when they're the actual for sale by owners, because they're constantly have to open doors and meet people at weird times, and they're also not meeting people when they could be meeting people that could have actually bought their house, that kind of stuff. And plus, real estate agents are actually supposed to be good at negotiating. So most of your agents do this day in and day out, whereas like a normal average person may only negotiate 3 houses in their entire lifetime. Versus, us, we do, if they're good, they do at least 2 or 3 a month, on average.
Yeah, so I mean, when it comes to prospecting, you want to make sure that you're dedicating time to trying to get listings, because and it's probably even more now, but at one point there was a stat that said each listing on average produces 2 buyer clients.
Yep.
And of course, with today's market, that may even be more.
Yeah.
But so buyers tend to be a little bit lower hanging fruit. It's a little bit easier to get a buyer client. And one of the main reasons is because of our electronic boxes.
Yeah.
So, if a buyer wants to go look at a property that's listed by an agent, well, most likely they're using an electronic box. So the only way that buyer can get into that property is to go through an agent. So it's kind of, our electronic boxes are kind of self-preservation, so to speak.
We do have a couple of the regular boxes. Personally, I'm not a fan of them, namely because I think they pose more of a security risk than the electronic ones do. Yes, they're combo boxes, but you can also, see that combo, get it from somebody else. You can, there's all kinds of ways to get into those things. I'm not going to go over them here because I'm not going to pose security risk for anybody that does use them.
And it's not uncommon for me to go to a property that does use a combination box, and the previous agent didn't change out the combination. They just basically left it unlocked.
Yeah. They just closed it and shut it, and that was it.
Yeah.
And to me, that's not when somebody's got access to your house and anybody could just walk up, see the combo box, and and basically open it, that becomes a problem.
Yeah.
I'm more along the boxes. Actually, can you get me one real quick? Yeah. Sorry. I'll show you what ours looks like versus what a combo box looks like. These are our electronic boxes. These things are, I don't know, this thing probably weighs like a couple pounds anyway.
Oh, every bit of it.
But these things are like really strong. Like these things, you can't slip anything in here to cause these things to release. You would have to literally beat this thing with a hammer. God, this thing's solid steel too, so I doubt you'd be beating it for long enough to get into it. These things only work with our phones. So
yeah, I mean, if somebody can break into that thing, congratulations.
yeah, I mean, they would be out there for a really long time doing it, and there's no way that thing would not, pose a lot of attention if somebody was trying to break into this thing. Versus a combo box, it's got a lot of security weaknesses, in my opinion. So that's why we use these. These aren't cheap. They're about $125 a pop for us, and these things are extremely well built, and I don't see problems with using these. I like these things, but they only work Bluetooth. So when we use them, you would either have to have our phone, which means you also have to have our separate PIN codes to make these things work. They track who was in them and who was last in them, even, versus a combo box, good luck knowing. You wouldn't know when somebody got into it. You wouldn't know anything about it. Whereas these things actually send out data every single time somebody gets into it and sends it to our cell phone to let us know something happened.
Yeah, as soon as somebody unlocks one of our boxes, then we get an immediate email saying, hey, this person or this agent opened your combination box or your lock box.
And they also tell us when they closed it back up, put the key back in it, so we can sort of get an idea of how long they were there for, which is great for from a listing standpoint, because we know if somebody was super interested, they had a hour-long showing scheduled, and they were in there for an hour and 15 minutes. They really, really liked the house, or at least were really interested in it, versus if they were only in there for 20 minutes, there may be a little bit of a good chance that they probably don't like the house as much. It could happen, but it's a lot less likely. And it gives us an idea of how good showings go before we actually know a showing report.
So let's go ahead and take a look at our current market report. So we'll start out with the absorption rate. So the absorption rate for June is 1.29 months. And if we go to our days on market, the average days on market was around 55 days in May. And then our list ratio is currently 99.1%. And the average price in June was $281,033. So it started to come down a little bit. So
yeah, the market as a whole has slowed down some. I mean, we looked at our average price. I think dropped. What is that, about $24,000 or $23,000?
$24,000.
I believe our average absorption rate went from I think it was 1.14 last month, and in May, and then went up to 1.29 in June. So we've slowed down a little bit. So a little bit, about 0.15, somewhere in that area, a tenth of a month. And so we're starting to see that slow down. Not in terms of recession per se. I think it's more or less is just because the way the inflation's happened, where we in our area had such a massive rush to get from people to move out of the western states and the northern states, which is where we saw most of our clients coming from. We had a lot of people all at one time that just started dumping and running from whatever their states were. And so we ended up with a massive influx all at one time, versus that we're still doing better in most cases than we were 2 years ago. So we're still doing really well. It's just the fact that, our market has slowed down from what everybody's been used to. So a lot of people are like, oh, wow, this has really slowed down a lot. Or, when in reality, we're still doing better than we were, several years ago. But I do see it slowing down a little bit more. I don't know how much more. My guess is it's going to depend a lot on how bad the inflation is, and et cetera, and where people are coming from, how bad those areas are getting. And I think that's going to be a bigger factor in how far our market moves up and down.
Yeah. So that will do the show for today. Tune in next month. We go live every first Monday of each month. And then we've also got a pregame show where we go live at all the Greenville Flyboys baseball games. And our next show will be next Monday, so a week from today. So make sure that you like our Facebook page, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we do actually have 2 YouTube channels. So
Yep.
we've got the Real Estate Gold that'll give you notifications on all of their upcoming Real Estate Gold shows. And should be starting to break some of those shows down to kind of give smaller segments that you can kind of go back and watch. And then we've also got the McCray Real Estate Group YouTube.
Yeah. Make sure to leave
channel as well.
comments on any of those channels if you want to see anything done. We'd be
Any
glad.
questions you have or any ideas or suggestions you have for future shows, please let us know, and we'll be happy to try to put those together for you.
Yeah.
So that will do us for today, and we'll catch you next time.